Welcome to the English with Kirsty podcast from www.englishwithkirsty.com. Here I'll be sharing with you tips, information and other learning resources so that you can improve your business English. Hi and welcome to episode 205 of the English with Kirsty podcast. I said at the beginning of the year that there would be more regular podcast episodes, and then I got the coronavirus and I lost my voice and couldn't speak properly for some time. So that's why you didn't have an episode, but I'm back now. My voice is back and I can speak normally. So I'm here to talk to you today about active language skills because they're important. And sometimes we don't make this distinction. What is the difference between active language and passive language? So we'll start by talking about that. And then I've got some tips for improving your active language skills because sometimes they're the ones that we neglect because sometimes they are the hardest ones to improve. And it's just human nature that we often go for the activities that are easier for us to do because we don't want to make our life difficult. But sometimes when you're learning a language, you also need to do those things that are a bit more challenging for you. So if we look at the difference between active and passive language skills, a lot of the activities that people think about for improving their vocabulary are passive, like watching films or reading books, or you're still doing something, you're watching the film or you're reading the book. And I really enjoy doing these things as well. For example, I've just started reading the entire Harry Potter series in Romanian. So these are really good things to do, but they are passive, not active. So they'll help you with your vocabulary and they'll help you to understand how people use the language, but they won't help you to make your own sentences. So other things can be listening to podcasts or watching films, watching series, reading books. All these things are great, but they're all to help you to develop your passive language skills. Because other people make the sentences, they have to think about what would sound good in that language, or they have to think about where the verb comes or where the adjective comes. You don't have to. You're watching and listening and consuming the content. So when you're working on your active language skills, it's about creating your own sentences and using the language for yourself to communicate your ideas. So this can either be speaking or writing. And generally people have a preference. I prefer writing, but both of them are important and both of them are skills that need to be developed if you really want to feel comfortable to use the language, not just to understand when other people use the language, but to use it for yourself. And of course these are harder because you have to think a bit more, but the more you do it, it's like a muscle. If you train this muscle to think in the other language, then the easier it becomes to do that because it becomes normality, and it's not such a difficult exercise for you. So this means that you think in the language. So you're thinking in English, I'm thinking in Romanian, thinking how to respond to things that you didn't expect, things that you didn't plan for. And to get used to hearing yourself speaking, that doesn't really apply to writing, but certainly with speaking, you have to get used to hearing yourself speaking the other language because otherwise it might mean that you don't want to because you don't want to listen to yourself. But everybody does it, everybody has to do it, and the more you do speak in the other language, the more natural you will feel, and therefore the more natural you will sound to yourself. And the mistakes thing comes up always comes up when we're talking about this passive language and active language. When you're creating sentences yourself, there will be mistakes. And somebody said something yesterday that I thought was really interesting. It's about not thinking I'm going to try and avoid every single mistake because that's not possible. At some point there will be. Unless you keep your mouth shut all day, you won't be able to avoid making any mistakes. So know that they will come. Try to minimize them. Try to learn from them. Nobody wants to make mistakes, but we can't always avoid making mistakes, especially when we're using another language. So that's another thing about if you really want to work on your active language skills, you need to understand and accept that you will make some mistakes. That's just part of the deal. So what activities can you do to improve your active language skills? There are 8 here that I've listed. There are lots more, but I'm going to start with 8. Otherwise, this podcast episode would get really long. So number one, a bit of advertising here, but it's something that will be helpful for you if you want to speak more, is find opportunities to speak. So I have the Conversation Club at English with Kirsty. We have a group for business owners and we have a group for general conversation. If you'd like to find out more about that, you can go to englishwithkirsty.com/conversations. And if you do that, there's also a page in Romanian as well. So this is my conversation club, but you can also find something else that if you don't want to come to my club, you can also find something locally. But the point is to search for opportunities to speak with other people, either with other learners or with other people who are interested in the same things as you, or other people who work in the same industry or are in some kind of interest group to which you belong. But whatever it is and whomever you want to speak to, find a reason to speak in English. Because that will commit you. If you know that there's a meeting, either online or offline, of a club or a group, and you've said that you're going, you're more likely to go because you've told other people that you're going. And if you do things like that, it's a kind of commitment that you don't have if you just say, oh, I'm going to find some way to speak more English this week, and you have no idea how you're going to do that. It's less likely to happen. So being part of a group or attending a club or a meeting or an event can help with your accountability, because you say, yes, I'm going to do this thing, and then you're more likely to do it. Or if you don't feel comfortable with that, find someone to talk with. For example, I talk about my experiences with Romanian because that means that I can relate as a learner, but the same applies to you as well if you're learning English. I do attend events in Romanian, but I also have friends and people that I talk with one-to-one because they're my friends and I want to talk with them, but also because that's much easier for me than talking in a group. And I want to improve my language skills. And if you find yourself talking with people just because you want to, you end up improving your language skills automatically because you're focused on that person and your conversation with them. But doing that means that you get some language practice too. So it doesn't all have to be in big groups. If you feel more comfortable one-to-one, find some people with whom you can speak. And I've always said in the past that language exchanges are good, and they are. I've met some really good people through language exchanges, but I've also learned in the last year that sometimes it's actually more productive once you're proficient with a language to find somebody with whom you only speak in that language. You know, they have to like you and they have to want to speak with you because it's not an exchange in the same way. But it does mean that you don't focus 50% of the time on each language. So if you can find friends who happen to speak that language anyway, it can really help you because it becomes normal for your relationship or friendship with that person to be in the other language. And you don't have to think, oh, which language are we going to speak? Because you always speak the language that you're learning, and that can be really good for you too. So number 3, in terms of writing, some people enjoy journaling in the new language. That's not something I've done, but I do know people who do it. So it could be whatever, whether it's a more practical journal or a more personal one. This isn't to share with other people. It's something for you to do to get used to communicating your thoughts and ideas in English. In writing, I guess you could do an audio journal and that would be speaking, but generally people do written journals, but you could make this into either a speaking or a writing exercise. Number 4, just getting used to thinking in the language on a more so not writing it down as a journal, but going around the house, doing the housework, cooking the dinner, driving home. If you're not going to crash the car, don't distract yourself. But if you're going home on the train or something, you can do it there. And thinking about how would you describe your day? How would you explain to somebody some of the things that happened during the day in English? You don't have to tell anyone. You could tell your dog or cat. It doesn't necessarily mean that you share this information, but it's thinking, okay, these situations happened today. I was involved in them. How would I describe them in English? How would I say what I thought about them in English? How would I tell somebody who wasn't there? So this isn't actually using the language, but it's making you think in the other language and practicing how you would talk about those events. And if you do that, you don't have to think, oh, what shall I talk about? Because you know what happened today or the following, or the previous day, you know what plans you have for the following day. So you don't have to be creative because you know, and then you just have to think about how you would communicate that in English. So number 5 is start small, because if you're somebody that's neglected these more active language skills, it's going to be harder to start. I didn't do that with Romanian, because I did do that with Turkish when I was learning Turkish. I guess some of you know this story, but I really neglected my speaking skills, which meant that I had a fairly good level of understanding for reading or listening to Turkish, but I didn't have a very good level of speaking because I refused to do it. And I decided that if I was going to learn Romanian, I wasn't going to make that mistake. And I haven't made that mistake, so that's good. But if this isn't something that you do a lot, if you don't write or speak in English a lot at the moment, then start with something small. It doesn't have to be that you're going to write a book or in the other language. It just means that you're going to decide to do something. Because one small step is better than thinking for a long time about lots of different big steps and then not taking any of them. Number 6 is something that somebody mentioned the other day at one of the conversation clubs, taking a course, but not a language course, although I think taking a language course is a really good idea because I sell language courses, and I have also been on language courses and I know that they're useful. But you can also take a course about something else that just happens to be in English. So this person, I can't remember exactly what she said. I think it was a dance course, and she went to this dance course in English. But there can be courses for anything. I know somebody was talking about doing a marketing course because they're a business owner, and this was in English. So it can be anything that you want to learn. It's not specifically a language course, but because you're learning about the new thing in the new language, it also trains your skills in that language as well as learning new things about the other topic. And if it's the kind of course where you participate and talk to other people, then it's also an opportunity to speak with other people about the thing that you're learning about on your course. So that can be useful too. Number 7, finding ways to interact on social media. That's probably more of a writing task than a speaking one, but it doesn't have to be long. And sometimes you can feel a bit nervous about commenting on social media in another language. Sometimes I plan a comment, I look at it, I change it 3 times, then I change it back to how it was in the beginning, and then I don't send it. But that's not good. If you if you have something to say that adds value, don't just comment for the sake of commenting. But if you can contribute to a discussion, or if you can say something positive about the content that somebody's made, or if you can share something that would add value to others, then it's good to start doing that. It doesn't have to be much. It could just be a couple of lines, but it makes you feel a little bit vulnerable sometimes because other people will see you writing in the language. But it also helps to build your confidence, because the more you do it and you get feedback, the more it will become normal to do that. So this could be anything. This could be Facebook, Instagram, comments on LinkedIn if you are on LinkedIn. It could be anywhere that you choose to spend time. But if you write something, then it will help you to form your ideas in that language and also to share them with other people, because sometimes that's also hard. You can think about your day in English, that's fine, but then sharing that with someone, that's another step. And the last one is going to be different for everyone, but I've written it down because it's something that I think we all need to do from time to time, is to put yourself in new situations. Because often we can avoid new situations by doing the things that are comfortable for us, and we don't push ourselves out of our comfort zones. But many times when you do push yourself out of your comfort zone, you find that things aren't as bad as you thought they would be. Maybe they're a bit scary, a bit stressful at the beginning, but generally, if we spend time feeling nervous about a new situation and then we do it, we find that it wasn't as bad as we thought it would be, or people are there and they want to help us and encourage us. And so I've had a few such situations recently, mainly around attending new meetings, meeting new groups of people where I've had to use my other languages. And it's really good to do that because you never know whom you'll meet. And it's also, it can be fun. And it helps you to use your skills. So there are 8 ways in which you can improve your active language skills, and you don't have to do all of them, but I would suggest you choose one. Think about the list and choose one, and then once you've done that, choose another one and do as many as you want, but start with something specific. One of them, one activity, one idea, one thing that you want to do. And if you want to, let me know how you're getting on. My email is podcast@englishwithkirsty.com. So if you want to share what happened when you decided to do something new to improve your active language skills, let me know. I'd be interested to find out. So I hope that was useful. Have a good week and have fun learning English. I hope you enjoyed this episode of the English with Kirsty podcast. If you have any questions or comments, my email address is kirsty@englishwithkirsty.com, or you can go to www.englishwithkirsty.com/podcast, where you'll find information about the individual episodes.